Hello, listeners and viewers. I'm Joseph from Zuma. Our team works in the wonderful world of recruitment for analytics, insights, and data, supporting tech startups, scale-ups, and data professionals in the Berlin region. Today's topic for the Data for Good podcast is embedding a data culture into a business culture. Today, I'm joined by Adam Bonwitt, Data Quality Team Lead at Finleap Connect in Berlin. He too is based in Berlin. Hi, Adam. How are you today?
Hi, Joseph. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. How's it going today?
Great. Just enjoying the cold, sunny day in Berlin.
Good. Fresh, sunny day. Cold
Yes.
and fresh.
Yes.
Yeah. Adam, let's get into it. Could you start by telling us, how did you first get into the world of data?
Well, I think my path is a little unusual, although I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I studied a master's in humanities and cultural studies, so nothing that has to do with data, although I always had a sort of propensity and curiosity about numbers and math and quantitative thinking and analytic thinking. And I think I would take it one step back. I think really interestingly, what was kind of my first experience in data was my army service in Israel, where I served in the Navy. And I was responsible for, the part sitting in a dark room in the middle of the ship with a bunch of computers and screens. And I was responsible for taking all of the information that the different sensors of the ship get and creating kind of a unified image of who's at sea. Are they friendly? Are they foes? Where are they going? And using that information to give recommendations about what we should do, right? And so I think that was a really formative experience. It was really, luckily I was in one of the rare 3-year periods in Israel where there was no war or military operation. So I was lucky enough not to only do war games mostly.
Mm-hmm.
But as a game, it's kind of fun, it's there's a lot of moving components. And my favorite part, and still is today my favorite part at work, is problem solving. Something goes wrong and you have to kind of isolate the issue and and come up with and fix it as fast as possible. And it was, again, it's like a riddle, like a problem. A bug is a riddle. And that's why it's kind of fun taking care of it. Anyway, so back to your question, this I think was kind of the formative experience that later prepared me for work in that area. And I joined ResearchGate as a student worker, doing really the kind of manual work that you sometimes have in startups, looking at user requests. But I found that I had a knack for thinking bigger in terms of the data and thinking of in a bigger context of what we can do with this data, how can we automate this kind of manual processes, and I think also I found out that I had a knack with people, and I think both of these elements are really important. And again, I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, that I got an opportunity to become the team lead of that team. And from then on, I was able to develop on some technical areas and get some experience, but that was my entry into this world.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. That really is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that humanities academic background,
yeah,
and then into the Israeli armed forces. essentially in a data or tech division. Israel, as I understand, has a very sophisticated technology offering to the world.
Yeah.
And that led to your research position, research gates, and adopting manual processes and trying to automate those processes. That's incredible. Great to see.
Let me just clarify one thing on the timeline. Was first the army while I was in Israel. Then I moved to Germany and I studied here my bachelor and master's, and then started working in ResearchGate. Yeah.
I see. Yes, that's a different route from myself. Well, typically from the UK, we take the academic route and then go into work experience. But I know Germany and other European cultures do it differently, perhaps a more preferred way. So today we are hopefully talking about embedding a data culture into a business culture. So let's scale it back. What do we mean by data culture, and what makes this critical to a modern business?
Well, I would start data culture. I would define as a organization-wide understanding of the importance of access to data internally within the company, the value of data, obviously, but also the pitfalls of data, because sometimes there's also a kind of people who don't work hands-on with data would sometimes have an idealized, I think that's kind of the popular notion, like data is objective, right? Data is just a pure factoid and whatever insight you get out of it is, must be an objective fact. That's actually never the case. But having a deep understanding of how you collect the data and how you use it, and have this in all levels of the company, this understanding of what you can get from the data and allowing access to as many people as possible, to kind of democratizing data to allow people to get insight from it. That's how I would define data culture.
Interesting. So democratization and allowing access to data, that's probably the angle that I would come in at with this, because I want to explore how companies are integrating data teams culturally into the business. So most companies, they understand the value of data, or at least they're starting to, and what data can reveal to help them make progressive business decisions. But often we see the data teams or culture, if you like, are not fully embedded into operational environments like HR, logistics, or finance. Typically, from my understanding, they're used more project by project and not as operational or business as usual. In the context of, or I think in the context of Berlin, if we look at this hive of a startup environment, what systems and processes should those startups adopt or implement to live into this data business culture? Are there key markers that they might see or use on a daily basis?
So let me start by one thing. It's not a direct answer to your question, but I think it's important. I think there is, I mean, in probably every tech company, there is understanding of the value of data. I think the part that is missing in a lot of places is understanding how much you need to invest in getting the right data in high quality, standardized, scalable, and how should I put it, dispersible, so that you're able to, make it accessible to as many people as possible. I think that there's usually a lot of people think, well, it's data, like how much you have to put in it. It's there in a table somewhere. You can use, whatever analytic tool, data science, you feed it into a machine learning algorithm, done, right? But that's not the case. There, it's a lot can go wrong in the initial stage of gathering it, the data pipeline, how you translate real life data into code, into basically binary artifacts. The kind of data that you record, these are all crucial questions. And in terms of processes, I'll be honest, this is something I don't have a clear solution. It's something that has been a process for me. It's been sometimes a struggle, sometimes a process since I started working in data to try and raise awareness in the organizations that I've been in to the importance of it and kind of what the value that it can bring. I think one of the main thing that I think could have a massive effect is to have some kind of cross-functional role. I'm blanking. There is a term for that, like data, like the person who also, let's say, is responsible to the legal aspect, data privacy aspect. I mean, let's call it. I'm blanking on the term, but there's a word for that. But let's call it like chief data officer, something like that, right?
Okay.
Somebody who is able to has an understanding of the business at large and is able to communicate effectively with different parts of the organization, basically to get buy-in. I think that's the challenge that I see, is to really be able to communicate effectively what you can and cannot do, and how to get there, and how to get to unlocking.
So are you suggesting that this role exists now, or this role could evolve?
Yes, I think so, both. I think it does exist. I think interestingly, it developed from the compliance aspect. So it developed from, let me try and think for a moment, because I think that would help the data governance.
Of course.
Yes, exactly. That's the term I was looking for. And so interestingly, I think, I mean, not that I know much about the history, my limited understanding of what that role is that it actually developed from the need to take into account both legal, regulatory aspects, while at the same time being able to disseminate data and make it uniform, across kind of all functions in an organization. So I think something like, again, like, so, but this only happens if you have buy-in from the top, right? So in the end, it depends on somebody with authority either listening and being convinced by the data people, or coming in with a built-in understanding that this is something that's worth investing in, and creating a kind of role that tries to make data as accessible as possible to as many people as possible.
So I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, so a data governance officer who has buy-in from exec level leadership, and not only that buy-in, but they have the autonomy to make these decisions, to coordinate with the various operational areas, so that data can be further embedded as a cultural norm, if you like.
Yes, exactly. And maybe to make this a little bit more concrete and less abstract, you have, especially in larger company, the amount and variety of data that goes in through different pipeline is staggering, right? You have, I mean, if we take, for example, a company, this is a, I mean, I won't name the exact company, but it's a company that I've interviewed for, and they, fascinating, topic, but they manufacture devices for people who have diabetes, right? And that has a, what's the term, like kind of, you insert a chip under the skin that is able to measure the level of glucose and kind of notifies you. And I'm not sure if this is like the future plan or already the case, but that is also able to inject you with insulin automatically when necessary, right?
Wow, when your insulin levels drop below a certain point.
Exactly.
Wow.
Great,
So they,
right? In turn, at least theoretically, right? So think about this. You have all of the data that this device collects. It's highly sensitive data. It's health data of people. You also have kind of all of the data that comes in from the sales funnel, right? With I mean, I can't even begin to imagine. I just kind of guessing. There's all of the I guess the sales are done through doctors, right? You need to have the information about all the doctors. You get feedback, numbers, obviously.
Buying patterns, number of units sold.
Yes. And that's just two aspects. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's even more complex in that, right? And this data is collected in different ways and stored. Usually what happens is that people develop these separate areas. So there are different technologies that are used for collecting and storing and accessing the data, right? And so completely lost. What were we answering? Right. Yes, the governance, right. So the kind of governance role here is somebody who has an overview of all of this and is able to standardize the data, ensure its quality, and with the help of tech professionals, develop or buy the right tools that allow access to be able to unlock. You can probably imagine what kind of insights can be garnered from data like glucose levels, when there's continuous measurement of glucose levels, right? So that's where the governance role, I feel, is crucial.
I see. So that is so data governance and having somebody at that leadership or senior level across a startup or a scale up, that's the kind of thing that could be implemented to help drive that data business culture.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
How will teams know, on a practical level or a daily level, how will teams know if they're embodying this, if they're taking on this data culture in the right way?
That's a good question. So this is something it's something I've been thinking about a lot, but I've never got the opportunity to do. But what I envision, what I would love to have the opportunity to try one day, is to have the data team as a service team, right? As similar to an analytics team, where you would have a data person embedded in different teams that can be part of the dailies, be part of maybe grooming tickets wherever it makes sense, so that a person with expertise could weigh in and understand like where data in all of its different stages from the collection and so for example, if a team starts collecting data from a new product, to have somebody there in the ground level to make sure that the way that the data is structured and collected is a way that enables dissemination and access from the ground level would save a lot of work later on when you realize, because this also happens a lot, you realize, oh, we actually have completely two different databases. We need to merge them. That could be a headache task, merging two existing databases. So something like that, I think, is one model. Another, and by the way, I'm riffing here. These are just ideas that. Another, I think it might be to maybe have, if we're talking about an engineering team, maybe to have one person instead of a data person from the team, to have one person who maybe gets, kind of like some training from the data team, training and education, to be kind of the data representative in the team. I think a lot, what has helped, going back to things going back to my experience, things that have helped in the past is it's more, it doesn't exactly answer your question because it's more from the data perspective, right? Is kind of pitching yourself, because there's a lot of time people, if this data culture doesn't already exist, there are people who are not aware of the value that that data work can bring them. So if there is any, let's say there's a sales project where you have a big pile of data and the quality of the data matters. And me as the data team lead hear about this, I can go to that team and say, hey, I think my team can help you here if you let us do X, Y, Z with the data.
And that's if you can see it, right?
Yes.
That's if you have the visibility. If it's in another team, you might not always be aware
yes,
of
exactly.
that.
Yeah. So I mean, so okay. Let me take it again. Again, I'll say it from like the perspective of the data team lead, and then I'll try to answer it again from the other team's perspective. So I think an important part of a data team manager is this kind of evangelism work. So I really love, also because I just enjoy this, to try to be as up to date as possible with all kinds of projects that are happening in the company, right? And to be in touch with the people, have doesn't have to be like a close, but have like a personal connection with people, right? And then when the opportunity comes, you can use it to say, to educate, to offer, whatever it is in the context that would make sense for a certain project. So that's kind of from my perspective. Now let me try to put myself in, and maybe can we make it a bit more specific? Can you give me something more concrete?
So the question was, how will teams know if they're embodying this data culture in the right way? I'm thinking on a practical, day-to-day level. If team members from those operational teams were to go back to a data team and say, this is what we've done, this is how we view data, would the data team then go, yes, you're right on this count, and this count, what you're doing is absolutely right, you're looking at the right numbers, you're doing the right things with those numbers, we believe that you're going to get the right outcomes from that work.
So I think the way you would know that is a given team, an operations team. First, is aware of what is the data that they need. Do they know where it's coming from and how it's collected? So do they have an understanding of the data that is crucial to their work? Do they have an understanding of the whole pipeline? I think that would be like a sign of whether or not a team is embodying a data culture.
Interesting. I particularly liked the training piece and separate to that, the education piece, bringing awareness to those teams.
Yeah.
And then from your perspective, being a data evangelist.
Yeah.
Is that how you approach your work to date?
Yes, because I've always, I've been compared to, like, I guess the average working time in the tech industry, I've stayed longer in places. So I've only worked in 2 companies so far. And in both of them, I sort of came in with a very defined and narrow set of responsibilities. I had like different things that specific parts that I owned, features, products, and so I was in the position that from that position I could see both what's right and wrong in how an organization treats data, and from that trying to sell and educate and on the value. So I mean, I'm kind of more used to a guerrilla mentality. You know what I mean? It was going to be very interesting to, and by the way, just to be clear, this is also, I think there is something I've felt since I started working on Finleap, that there is now a real understanding of the value of data and kind of the proper emphasis put on it. But it's been always very interesting process to try and educate. Yeah.
Interesting.
I've again lost the thread of what was the actual question, but I hope that was close enough.
No, we're going in lots of directions, and that's great.
Yeah.
My next question I wanted to ask you, because I'm really curious about it, is how closely should data teams or data professionals work with operational teams? And you've said just before about how perhaps one member from an operational team could learn some of the data basics. So generally speaking, how close do you think data teams or data professionals should work with operational teams? Do you think they should have a cross-functional role all the time, or only on projects? Do you think one should be embedded into an operational team, one member should be embedded, or what do you think it should look like?
Well, I first have a clarifying question, because operational team could mean many different things in different contexts.
Like a sales team or an HR team or procurement team.
Yes. My gut feeling here, and again, it depends so much on the specific use case and context, that in most cases it should be ad hoc project based, but that there needs to be regular contact. On some level, could be team leads, could be between kind of choosing within the, let's say, the sales team, somebody who's responsible for that aspect and is in regular contact with the data team that has an understanding. So again, I think I haven't seen yet the use case that justified a permanently embedded data person within a sales team, but I have no doubt that that use case exists somewhere. From what I've confronted, the most useful thing is to have somebody in the sales team that is educated, aware of what the data team can do for the sales team, and then have contacts on project-based.
I see. Okay. So again, there's a strong educational
Yes,
element to that.
because it really, I think, yeah, that's it. The most important thing really is that in the moment where that people understand that the data team can add value. I'm sure there are many organizations where there's just a lot of moments of points in different projects that people are just not aware of the value that data team can bring to a specific project. So I think having somebody who is aware, who would go like, oh, I think Adam and his team could help us with this. That I think what the kind of maybe the goal that we should strive for.
I see. And always having that in mind. What does this look like from a data perspective? What can we get from this from a data perspective? Yes. Okay, fascinating. You're the data quality expert and team leader. At this stage, as we draw to a close in the podcast, I typically ask all our guests to provide some advice to the data community. So what advice would you give for senior professionals moving into a data team leadership role?
I think my main advice, again, so much depends on the context, but let's assume I'll speak from my experience as moving into that role in an organization that maybe is not necessarily fully bought into the importance of data, right? So I think my advice would be to really focus on the evangelism part. So, but understanding that this is a process that takes time and is built on relationship with people. So like the idea is not to come in like like a missionary and shout out from shout about the importance of data, but develop these connections with people and kind of slowly, with goodwill, but persistently find opportunities to increase the awareness of what data can do for the organization. I would also say, in terms of hiring, I think that's also something that so it's data quality is always it's a little bit of a, it's defined differently in different organizations because it's not, there is no industry standard for this. Unlike the engineering team, the analytics team that have developed over time, there are like, by now there's like industry-wide structures to these things, right? And different processes and methods that you should work, like agile, sprints, all of that. Data team is very different in that sense. So in terms of hiring, that actually makes, and I've hired dozens of people because I've started in a role where you had lots of part-time people, that are working. And because it's, in many cases, it's a role that does not require a high level of tech proficiency, although that could be a bonus, again, depending on the context. It really is about attitude, passion, and the willingness to learn. Like I've had one of the things that I'm most proud of from my work is how many people that have worked in my teams have then been promoted within the company or found other jobs. So this is, and I mean, this was also my case. I guess maybe that's why I'm so passionate about this, because And maybe a little segue also, this is also advice for people who are just starting out, who maybe like me do not have a tech background, is get into startups that are either young, like that are a few years old, right? Because these companies tend to be more in flux, and there will be more opportunities. And there's more of a chance that if you get in and you, even if you don't have the background and the education, that if you show what you could do and you learn on the job, there is more chances that you will get an opportunity. So my case, where I was just as a, I was hired as a part-time worker and got a chance to become the team lead. Of course, there's also timing. Yeah, but so going back to the more as team leads. So what you want are people who are excited about learning, right? Who are excited about what the team is working on. That to me is the most important thing. I have like, when I do interviews, I sometimes call it a professional crush. Like you talk to somebody and it's exciting, just the conversation is exciting. And you're like, they get it. This person gets it. And it will be great. It would be fun to work with this person. So yeah, that's, I think, in terms of hiring, that's the thing we should. Okay.
Yeah, passion's definitely something that anyone coming into this environment should take. As you said, passion, attitude, willingness to learn.
Yes.
Combined with being, as per your approach, somewhat of an evangelist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and then there's the other route of coming in as a junior and taking a slightly different path as well.
Yes, I mean, I would say in general, data quality teams are a really good opportunity for people who want to go into tech and may not have a lot of tech background or education.
Interesting. Adam, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for today, unfortunately. There are a ton of other topics that I wanted to go into with you, but hopefully we can do that next time.
I would love to. It was a pleasure.
Oh, great. Good stuff. Okay, well, have a great weekend. And yeah, we shall catch up again very, very soon. And for any listeners or viewers, if they have questions or feedback, I'd encourage them to either reach out to myself or Adam directly, or simply post your questions and comments on the LinkedIn feed. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Take care.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Have a good one.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.